Welcome to What's Working, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. My name is Cam Marston. I host this show. We're now in our 7th year of studying the workplace, the workforce, and the marketplace trends that are shaping the workplace, the workforce, and the marketplace around us. Our goal is to find guests who can tell us things that we can utilize in our business, our life, our home, raising our kids, whatever it may be. Our goal is to gather content from the show that'll make each of us a little bit better at whatever it is that we do. Again, welcome. You can find What's Working on your favorite podcast app. You can find it on about 30 radio stations across the nation now. I hope you'll become a regular listener. Again, I'm Cam Marston. It's been twice in the past 10 days that I've been on the phone with clients for my consulting business, and we get off topic a little bit, and they begin to share with me some of their challenges that they're having within their workplace. And one of those challenges is work from home. They are dealing with employees who feel like they should be able to work from home, and a lot of this is geographically centered, such that this one client that I spoke to, his office is in the Northeast. He said, our rule is that if our people live within 50 miles of the headquarters, they have to go to work every day. And another one said if they live within 50 miles of their headquarters, they have to go to work 3 times a week. And many of these employees feel that that's unfair, because this one guy I was talking to said in 2020, when the turnover numbers escalated and our world was kind of on its ear, he reached out and began to hire people with the skill set he needed that had nothing to do with proximity to any of their offices. He needed the skills. And he ended up hiring a great handful of people in Idaho. Now, they're in the Northeast, and they began hiring people to do the work in Idaho. And these Idaho employees don't go into the office every day. The employees within 50 miles of the headquarters in New York City think that's unfair. And my friend, who is a manager and leader of these people, is fighting this battle on a regular basis. And it was just earlier today that I got off a phone with another couple of people, one of whom works in San Francisco, and she is required to report to her office on a regular basis. She doesn't want to, but she does. On the other Zoom call, this was one call, there were 4 of us on this Zoom call, the other person worked in Denver, and she did not have to go into the office on a regular basis. And they both admitted they were not antagonistic to one another. It was unfair. Now, the one that was going into the office said, and this has been mentioned a lot on different podcasts, different articles that I read, etc., the one that is going into the office said, due to my presence in the office, my visibility in the office, I have a greater opportunity for raises, promotions, and other sort of awards or recognitions for the fact that I'm simply visible. And it's not fair that I go into the office and have more opportunity versus my colleague in Denver who, because of her location, does not go into the office. How, Cam, do we rectify this? COVID shook us bad. This work from home, this hybrid flexible workplace, whatever you're going to call it, we're going to define it in a moment, has really altered the landscape in a big way. I've also had conversations with people who say the work from home thing is much more dependent on suburban versus urban. If you live in a city with great suburbia, you're going to find most people want to work from there. It's not about going to the office, it's the commute. It's not being in the office, it's the commute to the office. And it has impacted culture. Culture, as you've heard me say before, has been a big part of the workplace conversation, especially post-COVID. All right, what's the point? When we come back from break, I will have on the other side of a Zoom call from me, Mr. Nicholas Bloom. He's a PhD in economics. He works at Stanford. He wrote an article in the New York Times called The 5-Day Office Week is Dead. I started sniffing around, and this guy has been studying work from home and its impact on the workplace and creativity and so many other things. I requested him to be on the show in the fall. He said I can do it after the first of the year when the conclusions are clear. When we come back, I'll be talking to Mr. Nick Bloom. He's with Stanford, and we're going to talk about the workplace and what work from home has done to it. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. We'll be right back.
This is Seth Cherniak, Vice President of Branch Development for the Jeffrey Matthews Financial Group. If you're an experienced financial advisor wanting the freedom of independence, but aren't sure making that jump is right for you, we should talk. Jeffrey Matthews has developed a successful program for advisors who don't want to be 1099 contractors and don't want to pay for their own overhead. We're looking for advisors who want the freedom to run their business the way they see fit, with the support that comes with a W-2 firm. If you're interested in joining one of our branches, or if you want to open your own branch as a full-time employee, let's chat. Our compensation plan is one of the most competitive among all W-2 firms, big or small. Reach out to us today at jeffreymatthews.com, connect with me, Seth Cherniak, on LinkedIn, or click the link in the podcast.
Jeffrey Matthews Financial Group, member FINRA, SIPC. We are back. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. Again, thank you so much for joining me on this show. On the other side of a Zoom call from me is Nick Bloom. He's the William Eberly Professor of Economics at Stanford University, a senior fellow of SIEPR, and the co-director of the Productivity, Innovation, and Entrepreneurship Program at the National Bureau of Economic Research. His research focuses on management practices and uncertainty. He previously worked at the UK Treasury and at McKinsey & Company. Nick, thank you so much for your time. Welcome to What's Working.
Hey, Cam, thanks for having me on.
Talking to you at in your home, it appears from the Zoom call, near Stanford University. I guess you live what you study. You are working from home today.
Yeah, I am at home. In fact, I'm kind of on a weird hybrid existence. Actually, I dropped my youngest two kids off at school this morning, working from home for much of the day, and then heading into the office in the afternoon. I live on the university campus, so otherwise, I probably would go in for full days, but being 5 minutes from work, it's easy to go in for half day.
So your commute is a walk across campus. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, a bike ride. So I always leave late. If I was, a bit more organized, it would be a walk, but it's normally a rushed bike ride.
Well, I want to talk about commutes as one of the parts of our conversation as we go along here, but I'm going to start with the opening sentence from your New York Times article, which was October 16th. It reads this: working from home is here to stay. I can prove it with data, lots and lots of data, showing that returning to the office is DOA. Talk to me about that. Let's begin there.
So let's go back a bit in time. 2019, about 5% of days, full days of work from home. So work from home is a thing pre-pandemic, but it's pretty rare. 2020, it explodes to about 60%. So most people that could work from home are doing it fully remote, doing it full time. Question is, would that stick or not? And I would say 2020, 21, folks were like, well, we're all going to go back to the office. Eventually, we're going to return to what things used to be. Turns out by the end of about 2022, the data we were seeing, we were surveying 10,000 Americans a month. We also looked at the castle occupancy data. The return to office kind of died. So, December 2022, there is a tombstone that says return to office, rest in peace. And what do I mean by that? If you look at the share of days work from home in December 2022 across the US, it's 28%. If you look at it in December 2023, 1 year later, it is also 28%. I have the January data right now. It's also 28%. It is as flat as, it's the British to say, flat as a pancake. So, we have stalled out, returning to the office. This is the new normal. Where we are now is basically where we're going to be for the next few years.
There was some great irony in this article that you wrote, that you visited the offices of Zoom, and we are on a Zoom recording here, and they had forced people or encouraged people to return to work. They have created the technology that allows work from home, allows a component of work from home, yet they were encouraging people to return to work. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So Zoom is a perfect example of why data beats, a lot of media stories. As the media tends to run with the topic and just pummels it to death. So I had lunch with Eric Yuan, the CEO and founder of Zoom, in September 2022. And I was over there and I was asking him, hey, the office is quite busy. What's going on? And Eric said, well, folks are typically coming in 2 days a week. And so that was September 2022. So a year and a half ago now. And then about, a few months ago, Zoom formally announced that they were going to force folks to come back to the office for 2 days a week if you lived within 50 miles And if you lived more than 50 miles away, you could stay fully remote. So all they've done is basically just formalize what had been a working practice for at least a year by this point. The media jumped all over it and says, Zoom ends work from home, blah, blah, blah. In fact, you could have written a headline saying Zoom guarantees work from home forever if you live more than 50 miles away, and for 3 days a week if you're less than 50 miles. So people reading it got the impression that work from home has died at Zoom. But if anything, it's the reverse. They basically said hybrid's here forever. And if you live a long way away, actually, you can be fully remote.
Let me tell you about my listeners real quick, and then I want to ask you the pros and cons of work from home. My listeners are typically going to be a leader or an influencer in their workplace. The show is called What's Working with Cam Marston, and we try to find the trends shaping the workplace, the workforce, and the marketplace. The people who gravitate towards the show and its podcast are influencers in their workplace looking for ideas that they can grab and apply to their own workplace. In the past 10 days, I've had two, and I said this in the introduction before you were on, I've had two people complaining to me. One is a manager of teams who said, my people just want to continue to work from home. We feel like they need to be here. The other one was complaining from the opposite side. She had worked from home, but she felt her promotional opportunities were being limited due to her lack of exposure. She didn't feel it was fair that her promotions or her growth opportunities within the workplace were limited due to her not being present in the workplace. So keep my listener in mind, these business influencers who are looking for ideas, and let's begin with the positives of work from home in some sort of measurable way. You articulated some of them in this article from October. Build on that if you would, please.
Sure. So first off, those two sentiments both have a lot of truth in them. So why don't I go through it? So basically, for most professionals and managers, it looks like hybrid is where it's at now. And hybrid classically would be 3 days in the office, 2 at home. So vanilla hybrid is Monday, Friday, you're at home, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you're in the office. I have a study that's hopefully about to come out in Nature, and there's a lot of data showing that hybrid like this, well-organized, you're in on the same days, is about flat on productivity. It's not better, it's not worse, but it keeps employees really happy. They value it about the same as an 8% pay increase. So why would you do it as a business? You do it because it reduces retention, turnover, helps, basically keeps labor costs down.
So the benefit of it is that it's equivalent, if I heard you correctly, of it feels like an 8% pay raise to do hybrid.
Yes, and there's no real cost. I'm not claiming it's better for productivity. I'm not claiming it's worse. The evidence is it's about flat.
Address the point of view of the lady who didn't feel her promotional opportunities were equal due to ability to not have to be in work.
So it's certainly true. If you are coming in much less than the rest of your team, when you're being evaluated against them, your promotion's likely to fall behind. So look, if you're a team of 10 people, and they are coming in 5 days a week and you're coming in 1. In fact, I have exactly a study on that 10 years ago, and you find promotion rates halved for people that work from home 4 days a week compared to those that didn't. Instead, if you have a team where everyone is working from home Monday, Friday, and you're all coming in Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you're probably having enough FaceTime mentoring training to make sure that your career is progressing well. And for that, it doesn't look like your promotion will be harmed.
Is the lack of promotion due to lack of productivity or lack of familiarity by the person who awards the promotion?
I think it's a mix of both. I actually did a study that was published 10 years ago where we randomized by even on odd birthdays in a large company, whether people work from home 4 days a week or 0. And we tracked them for up to 18 months. And we found their promotion rate for people randomized into 4 days a week at home was halved. So A, there is a real cost. B, we then interviewed the managers and said, what's going on? And there's basically two things. One is you could think of it as discrimination, whatever you like, but they were being forgotten about. The manager said, to be honest, we should have thought about, Susan or Peter, but they're not here most of the time. We forgot about them and we focused on somebody else. Maybe that's trainable, possibly, but that's driver one. The second thing is they said, look, there is also some real cost of not coming in. So sure, you're at home working away, beavering away, working hard, but the folks in the office are going for lunch, coffees, they know what's going on, they're connecting with each other, they're building networks. Managers need to have that kind of knowledge and, intangible and social capital. And so if you go below, let's say 1 to 2 days a week, there probably is some genuine cost you're going to bear in terms of potentially lower promotion rates.
What is your message to managers listening to this who have the responsibility of awarding the promotions? Is your suggestion to them, think about those people working from home, or you're absolving them from having to think about the people who are working from home because they're choosing not to be there?
I mean, first and foremost, I would say try and avoid mixing things up within teams. You're just setting yourself up for a fall. So if you have a team of 10 people, they really want them to have the same setup. And in fact, even more than that, it's not just that you want them, say, to all come in for 3 days a week. They should be on the same 3 days a week. What drives people mad is saying, I come in on Monday and Cam, you're in on Tuesday. You know, Sarah's in on Wednesday, Paul on third, etc. And I come in the office is half empty and I'm on Zoom calls, etc. So the easiest way to fix all of this is to say to your team of 10 or 100 of your division, look, we're just all going to come in 3 days a week. Let's say Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and we're going to work from home Monday, Friday.
I'm sorry, Nick, I'm interrupting you. We're going to go to break. When we come back from break, I'll read to you some of the acknowledgments and awards, and you're going to be impressed. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. We'll be right back.
This is Bill Eastet. I perfected my baking recipe behind my live music stage at my little restaurant in Fairhope, Alabama. We have custom-made smokers and small batch bacon made just for you. So if you're looking for the best bacon in America that has been cured, smoked, and even serenaded by songwriters, you definitely need to try Billy's Small Batch Bacon. www.billiesbacon.com.
Nick Bloom is an economics professor at Stanford University. I promised you a list of his accolades, and in order to keep the show on pace, I'll only touch on a few of them. He's a fellow of the American Academy of Arts and Science. He's the recipient of the Alfred Sloan Fellowship, the Bernasser Prize, the European Investment Bank Prize, the Fritsch Medal, the Kaufman Medal, the National Science Foundation Career Award. He has a BA from Cambridge, a Master's of Philosophy from Oxford, and a PhD from University College London. And undoubtedly, the highlight of his career is he's talking to me right now.
Exactly. Thanks for having me on, Cam.
Nick, a lady made a strong statement in an interview that I did for the radio show a couple of weeks ago, and she said this: creativity, we have evidence, she said, that creativity in the workplace has taken a hit during times of work from home, and her evidence was the few patents that were applied for during the time that work from home began to surge. In other words, creativity has been stifled in this time of work from home. React to that for me, Nick.
There's some real truth in that. So just to give you the numbers, on average, if you are fully remote, it looks like it is harder to be creative. On the other hand, if you're hybrid, so you're coming in, let's say Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, at home Monday, Friday, it looks like that is enough time to be creative. In fact, there's a fantastic paper in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences saying the best way to be creative is like mix some time together when you're in a room thinking about stuff and some quiet time. It's called bursting. So fully remote is indeed costly for creativity. And in fact, there's a lot of concerns as that 2020 period when there was lockdown and people, are permanently remote, may have some long-run costs for creativity. In fact, it also looks like it has long-run costs for our kids' learning.
Are you working with the managers and leaders? Remember in the previous segment, I told you a little bit about who's listening here. Are you working with them in your research to deliver recipes, if you will? Here's the way the workplace should work. Or are you gathering data and reporting out what the data says?
I mean, both. So, here's the rest. I'm an investor and an advisor to a bunch of companies. So I have my own companies I'm working with. The advice I give to firms and managers is, for professionals, you probably want to think typically around hybrid. So you want to be typically having them come in 3 days a week. It looks like that's probably enough face time. Let them work from home Monday, Friday. If you want to go fully remote, you shouldn't really evaluate this in terms of productivity. You should evaluate it in terms of profits. So what do I mean? The evidence on fully remote is a bit mixed, but you can think is maybe negative on productivity, maybe minus 10%, harder to innovate, harder to mentor, etc. So initially you think this seems like a terrible deal. Why would I want to do something that's 10% less productive? But there's a huge cost advantage. First off, you don't have to pay for the office. That typically maybe saves you about 10% on costs. Secondly, you can hire people across the country or globally, which may save you another 20, 30, 40% on wage bills. So fully remote is not about saying productivity is improved. It's more the thought process is maybe productivity is 10% down, but costs are 50% down. And so for a bunch of activities like call centers, data entry, payroll, IT support, we don't need them in the office. Let's get them out of here. Sure, they're slightly less efficient, but they're a heck of a lot cheaper.
I heard the argument made, not the argument, but an observation made not long ago, and that was anybody who has started in the workforce, think of the young people here, since roughly the year 2018, 2019, the workplace has always looked weird, crazy, strange compared to most of us who've been in the workplace for a big part of our adult life. And this young workforce out there has never seen a quote-unquote traditional workforce. What they're getting used to in the workforce is very non-traditional, and they're struggling to apply themselves. They're struggling to fit into a workplace full of traditional employers in there. You think about the baby boom work ethic of long days and back to the wheel and nose to the grindstone, trying to relate to a college new hire who has never truly known what it means to go to work 5 days a week. Where do you bridge the gap? How are you working with your businesses that you are advising, perhaps have ownership in, to help each side understand the other side?
Yeah, so my biggest point of connection here is with the hundreds of students that I'm teaching. Perfect. My oldest two kids, 19 and 20. So I generally advise them for your first job, your first few years, think of your 20s, you probably want to be going into the office 3, maybe 4 days a week. And typically they want to. There's not many 21-year-olds that want to actually be fully remote because they say, look, I want to mentor and I want to be mentored and learn. I want to be social. And also my apartment where I live isn't particularly big. I don't want to spend all day in my bedroom. And so I would generally advise for people listening with kids in that age, try and get them to take a job that has them in the office 3-4 days a week. What you see in the data is when people hit their 30s and 40s, they tend to have kids around the house. They're a bit more experienced. They're higher up the learning curve. That is the time they tend to, think about maybe being a little bit more remote. Maybe they're only coming in 2-3 days a week. Interestingly, folks 50 plus, I'm 50, I'm in that bucket at this point, they tend to return a bit more to the office again. They're kind of used to it and their kids are out of the house.
And they're lonely and they're bored and they're looking for somebody that'll talk to them. I can relate to that. You're in the epicenter of technology innovation in our nation there. You've got to see things that people like me in South Alabama, it takes a while to get to us. What is the next disruption? What is the next disruption that's going to cause the workplace to shake up a little bit?
It's great talking to you. I know you're in Mobile, Alabama, and it's in reverse. It's a bit, you can get trapped in the Silicon Valley ecosystem. I think if I look ahead, if I think of AI, that's the other big topic people focus on. AI feels a bit overblown at times. Where I think it's going to be a big deal is actually for fully remote activities. So if you think of the types of things that you might, payroll processing, call centers, data entry, this is the kind of stuff that, eventually is going the way of AI. For most other jobs, I don't see it having a huge impact on us. The other thing I see in the longer run is better videos, better software, better hardware, making it easier to work remotely. To give you an example, I was at a dinner with some venture capitalists a few months ago, and a guy there was saying, look, I've raised, 20 million for my startup to do these holograms. I'm trying to replicate the Jedi Council in Star Wars. And imagine if that thing, the guy had raised millions of dollars. So this isn't a pipe dream. He's actually actively doing it. Imagine if that comes to fruition. It's not like we'll all be fully remote, but I think what it would mean is 5-10 years from now, we may go into the office one less day because it's so much easier to cooperate, by hologram.
So when we are looking at the United States has historically been, the way I understand it, a little bit behind other Western European countries in workplace trends. And I have some clients in the UK. They do things a little bit different than I do. Are there countries out there, Nick, that you're following that are kind of pushing the envelope a little bit on workplace trends or work from home or anything like that, that you're saying so-and-so nation is a little bit ahead of us, we're going to be there in 3 to 5 years? Are you looking at things that way?
It's a great comment you make. I actually, can hear I'm a Brit by birth. I actually have the different view, and from all the research, America is leading the world.
No kidding.
On management HR. Well, think about this. America has the world's leading business schools. It has most of the world's leading companies. If you look at the most valuable companies around the world, more than half of them are based in the US. On work from home, it's definitely at the forefront. Americans roughly are getting it right. I mean, most professionals, managers are going to hybrid. Actually, later today, I am talking to a minister in South Korea, and the government of South Korea is seriously thinking about trying to force South Korean companies to allow more work from home. Currently, they're forcing them into the office like every day. And their big thing is, look, that's a nightmare on commute. It's making our cities congested. It's making it hard for people to have kids, and their population's declining. Whereas American companies have said, look, we're not particularly into fully remote, but we think it makes sense to let you work from home Monday, Friday. Also, the other big thing is, I would say another big trend is Americans are really good at performance management. They tend to evaluate you on what you get done, outputs, achievements, sales targets. That works very well with working from home.
I'm on a Zoom call with Nick Bloom. He teaches at Stanford, California. He's the William Eberly Professor of Economics at Stanford University. A really compelling conversation about the implications and, as we're getting into, best practices from working from home. Nick, when we come back from break, we're going to wrap it up, and I want to talk to you about commute times and how that relates to things. And then, what has surprised you from your research? I'm curious about what has caught your attention. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. Be right back.
This is Seth Cherniak, Vice President of Branch Development for the Jeffrey Matthews Financial Group. If you're an experienced financial advisor wanting the freedom of independence, but aren't sure making that jump is right for you, we should talk. Jeffrey Matthews has developed a successful program for advisors who don't want to be 1099 contractors and don't want to pay for their own overhead. We're looking for advisors who want the freedom to run their business the way they see fit, with the support that comes with a W-2 firm. If you're interested in joining one of our branches, or if you want to open your own branch as a full-time employee, let's chat. Our compensation plan is one of the most competitive among all W-2 firms, big or small. Reach out to us today at jeffreymatthews.com, connect with me, Seth Cherniak, on LinkedIn, or click the link in the podcast.
Jeffrey Matthews Financial Group, member FINRA, SIPC. On the other side of a Zoom call from me is Nicholas Bloom. He's a professor at Stanford University in the economics department. His list of accolades is longer than we have time for in this segment. Just suffice it to say, the man is well qualified to talk about what we are talking about. Nick, it has been my observation and conversations I've had around this topic that commute times are the greatest determinant of whether work from home is valued or not. Have I got that correct? I was talking to a colleague of mine in New York City. He's got employees that have to commute 2 hours each way because of where they live to get to work each day on a train. And they hate it. Justifiably, they hate it. Tell me how commute times work into this satisfaction from work from home.
Totally. So yes, the biggest benefit of work from home, and you survey people, and we've surveyed tens of thousands of Americans, is avoiding the commute. There's actually a fantastic paper by the Nobel Prize winner, Danny Kahneman, that was published in Science 20 years ago, 2002. And it ranked what people like and dislike doing by hour. You won't be surprised to hear the most popular activity was politely called intimate relations. So that was the favorite activity per hour. The second most hated activity was work. That's why you've got to pay people to do it, because they would never do it for free. Turns out the most hated activity per hour is commuting. People hate commuting even more than working. And so working from home is like a bonanza, because you save, an hour a day of the most horrible activity for the typical employee.
The most hated activity that humans do, I'm repeating this to make sure I got this correct. The most hated activity that humans do is commuting to and from work. Is that correct?
Out of the 30, I mean, look, they didn't include in the list being subject to torture and stuff, but out of the 30 they polled, you'd have think work, but people prefer to work more than commute. They hate commuting so much.
What's the magic spot? What's the sweet spot for commuting? Over this amount and the dissatisfaction increases exponentially. Under this amount, people can tolerate it.
People just loathe it per minute. Commuting, typical person maybe doesn't mind if it's a 5-minute walk along a pleasant, path, but most commuting is in traffic, stop, start. You can't do anything with that time. When I lived in London, I used to commute on the tube, London Underground. In some ways, it was easier. I could read. But on the other hand, your face is shoved into some tall guy's armpit. It's like, so people just dislike commuting. Now, it's the other thing interesting. We looked at the data is when you work from home, you save about an hour a day on commuting. You also save about another 10 minutes on less grooming. So people tend to bath less, brush their teeth less, quite horribly, use deodorant, shave, put on makeup. Now, it's not the case they all do that when they come into the office. So some people look at the data and say, look, only 92% of people actually brush their teeth every day. Even in the office, it's like in the 80s at home. So maybe that's why I want to work from home, because I don't want to be subject to someone's stinky breath.
No kidding. That's an interesting observation. 10 minutes a day are saved by working from home on grooming, and I can relate to that. My children aren't as old as yours, but when they stay home on a Friday night and don't go out, they do not pay attention to grooming habits as they sit in front of their game console, etc. And I tell them, one of the benefits of going out on a Friday night is to learn how to not look like how you look right now. to take some time and attention and get yourself looking okay.
It's also gendered, I should say. Women save more time because the biggest saving of time is on makeup. And if you look, I think it was women 50 to 64 are saving 17 minutes. They have a pretty high tax on them in terms of when they go into work, the kind of, levels of makeup and turnout people expect.
What has surprised you the most, Nick, about the research you've done on all the things that we've talked about? What has leapt out and grabbed you by the scruff on your neck and said, I didn't expect this?
I've been working from home for 20 years. It was a bit of an outlier pre-pandemic, and I was that engaged by it. Their eyelids would start to droop if I talked about it. I've been amazed how it's stuck. Look, so we had to go home in the pandemic because of lockdowns or, infection risk, but it seems to kind of stuck around. We're not into 2020 levels, but it's a permanent thing. And it makes me wonder what else in society is ripe for change. Another thing I wonder about is why the schools closed for 3 months. Cam, I know you have kids. I have kids. The reason traditionally they're closed for 3 months is so that kids can be let off to go harvest the fields. But, nobody anymore is doing any harvesting. We don't have school children do that anymore. And for parents, it's hard work. You have got to find camps and stuff. I'm not saying no summer break, but you may think, let's take the rest of the school year a bit more easily and, make more use of those school resources. So there's many other things in society, I think, are ripe for massive change. And work from home is one, but it can't be the only one.
So schooling. There's also, I've read studies about test scores rising in young students if they start school later. Like my kids have to be there at like 7:48, some strange number on the clock. But if they were able to start at 9 o'clock, we would see a rise in test scores. But the parents generally are up in arms about it. We're not going to let our kids do that. They're not going to be like, this is the way I had to do it. So there's all kinds of, you're right, there's all kinds of things baked into our society. And even the school time start, as I understand it, was related to the days of an agricultural society, not reflective of our time today. It will be interesting to see what you get into next. What are you sinking your teeth into? Where is your next project? When I call you in 3 years from now and beg you to be on the show, what will be the new revelation that you've presented to our society that says, hey, we do it this way. We don't need to do it this way because there's advantages to doing it this other way.
Well, I'll tell you a fun project I'm doing right now that may relate to some of your listeners, which is called The Rise of HR. So we have data from the 5 highest paid executives of the largest 1,500 companies in America. If you look back in the early data, 1992, 93, none of them were in HR. It's the CEO, the CFO, maybe head of operations, etc. As time has gone on, the share that are in HR has been rising. It's now about 15%. Why is that? But it used to be 30 years ago, HR was all about compliance, payroll, benefits, etc. The last 5 years, it's become a nightmare / much harder work, much more important. So think of all the DI stuff, COVID lockdowns, work from home. all of that affects who you hire, your strategy, your real estate portfolio. So a pretty fascinating research project now is, well, how's that impacting companies? So for anyone listening, HR pay has been going up a lot because these are tougher to fill positions, and HR are becoming,
Yeah, you dropped out on for me in a moment there, a little technology lag. We are seeing the rise of HR, their influence. At the same time, there is a quiet groundswell out there pushing back against some of the DEI programs that were thrust on us in such a big way. It'll be interesting what your survey reveals, whether that comes to play at any point. Nick, any final parting thoughts? Keep in mind my listener, an influencer in his or her workplace looking for ideas that will make them better at whatever it is they do. You've given us good advice on things to tell our kids. You've given us ideas on structure of the workplace or the work week. Anything else that you can think of that would be valuable to my listener?
Here's a final thought. Look, if you are an office running hybrid, let's say you're coming in 2-3 days a week, why not see if you can share your office with another company? Two benefits. One is
to another company, not another employee, another company.
Another company. So imagine company A gets the office Monday, Tuesday. Company B gets it Wednesday, Thursday. A, you have to, halve on real estate costs. You potentially save a lot of money, some securities, etc. B, it's a heck of a lot easier to organize it. One of the things I hear of managers is compliance is so painful because, employee A wants to come in Friday because their kid is not at school. Employee B wants to come in Monday because their wife's schedule is like this. If you suddenly say, we only have Monday, Tuesday, you got to come in on those 2 days, it's a lot easier to manage it. So that's another trend I'm seeing. I find the other thing I've been seeing is managers wanting employees back in, them refusing, and doing a bit of a, quid pro quo saying, look, you have to come in. We're going to get tough, but in return, we'll let you have 2 weeks fully remote. Let's say in the summer when business is quiet anyway.
Very good. Nick, I'm grateful. It was a show full of content, and I'm absolutely grateful for your time. Thank you very much. I know my listeners are grateful too. Folks, I'll have Nick's website in the podcast notes if you want to check him out further. Nick, thank you so much. I'll say it a fourth time. I'm grateful.
Cam, thanks for having me on.
Take care. Come back after this break with what I heard, what I learned, and more advice for you, or maybe things that will work. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. Be right back.
I'm Joey Mason. For 4 years, my goal has been to produce the best farm-to-table products I'd ever eaten. I've done just that at our on-site USDA facility in Grand Bay, Alabama, allowing us to ship directly to your door. This is true farm-to-table. Visit us at masonhillsfarm.com to see all that we have to offer.
Once the recording stopped, Nick pointed me to his LinkedIn page. That's the way he'd like for most people to connect with him, and I will put that LinkedIn page in the show notes of the podcast link. And if you want to check this show out as a podcast, or you heard it on the radio and you want someone else to hear it, you can send it to them as a podcast. Go to whatsworkingcam.com. You'll find this show as well as others. You can check out Nick's link in LinkedIn or connect with him by clicking on that link, and I hope you will do so. Folks, his CV was more full of awards and distinguishments than probably anyone I think I've ever had on the show. I think he may be the most widely recognized expert in his field than any other person I've had on the show, and on a national scale, in fact, international scale. He's written columns and articles for The Economist and New York Times, as I shared on the show. Pretty cool. And I can honestly say getting him on the show was not easy. He's busy. He did reach out to me after I emailed him, 5-6 times and agreed to do this. And finally, we got it scheduled and done. So you can take his word very seriously. He's very well educated in the subject matter of working from home. So let's recap what we heard here. It's here to stay. A couple of 3 days a week seems to be the norm for most employers. If you do choose to work from home, people will often overlook you when opportunities for promotions and bonuses and raises can be given out to individuals. It's a choice you make. At the same time, if you are an employer and can offer your people the ability to work from home, and you don't now, it's the equivalent of an 8% pay raise, which isn't bad. 8% isn't bad at all. So something to consider, an arrow for your quiver, if you will. The most loathed activity in human existence, according to what Nick said, is commuting. He obviously, as he said, he didn't include torture and other obvious things like that. But on the list, the most loathed thing that people do per day is commute. And any amount of commute time is too much. I was looking for a breaking point. Like if once the commute gets over 20 minutes, the dissatisfaction with the commute increases. Or once the commute gets over 30 minutes, or if you have to take public transportation, whatever it may be. I was looking for some sort of breaking point where the commute becomes more and more unbearable. But according to Nick, any amount of commuting time is unbearable. If you can eliminate it, reduce it, etc., it's the best thing to do. I know this. The office that I have in Mobile, Alabama is about 3.5 to 5 minutes away from home on a bad traffic day. It's not unreasonable. I could get into shape and literally hold my breath to get from the office to the house, and that's why I keep this office. I love it because of the very short commute time. Thanks to Nick Bloom. All right, folks, that'll wrap us up this week. Find me on social media, Cam Marston. I, too, like Nick, am most active on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Facebook. I hope you'll follow, like. If you go to the podcast site, give us a rating. Those ratings matter. Reach out to me personally, cam@cammarston.com. Let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your feedback or get suggestions for show topics, and I can hunt down the guest that may be appropriate for it. So that'll wrap us up this week. You're listening to What's Working. We continue to grow. I'll have more about that in the future. Thanks for listening. Have a good week, everybody. As you likely know, this show originates as a radio show broadcast across the state of Alabama, and it continues to grow in both radio listeners and market. After it's formatted for radio, we then turn it into this podcast. Please share it with those you think would find it interesting, and subscribe to the podcast on my YouTube page where you can leave messages and your thoughts and your comments, and I'll certainly get back in touch. Finally, if you're a fan of the show, please offer a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You can find my book called What Works on Amazon.com. In it, I highlight the top 10 ideas from the first 200 episodes of the show. Mind you, they're not the top 10 best episodes. They're the top 10 best ideas. Many times the same ideas are brought up again and again by different guests, and we dig into those ideas in such a way that they'll be easily applicable for your business. Simply go to Amazon and enter my name, and you'll find What Works as well as my other books. Chapter titles include How to Find a Niche, Innovation, Building Teams, and so forth. To learn more about the workshops and seminars I offer, go to cammarston.com. There you can view clips of my work, view workshop titles, view my reviews, case studies, customer lists. It's all there. If you'd like a free copy of one of the chapters of my book, enter your email address at the bottom of the homepage at cammarston.com. And from that site, you can email me directly. I always love to hear from you. You'll also find me on social media. Find Cam Marston on all the social media platforms, and you may need to enter the numeral 1. There's one other Cam Marston out there, and that numeral 1 distinguishes me from him from time to time. So if you're unsure if it's me or not, enter that numeral 1 after my name, and it should do the trick. On a more personal and less professional side, I record weekly commentaries that air across Alabama on Alabama Public Radio twice each day on Fridays called Keeping It Real. They've won statewide and national awards. They're simple observations on the world as it goes on around me, and they're only a few minutes long. They're a passion. You can find them on the same podcast app you're using to listen to this. Finally, if you're interested in advertising on this podcast or the radio show, reach out. I've worked hard to cultivate a specific listener, and I can tell you all about them, and I have many different options for helping you reach them. Thanks again for listening. We'll have another episode available soon.